Hey there, folks. I'm Matt Hansen,
And I'm John Johnson.
and you're listening to Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, the podcast where we discuss favorites we've reread, both classic and new comics we want to read, and everything else in between.
And here's the comic we picked this week.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Planes, Trains, and Comic Books. Today, we are reading a manga that I've never read before, but I've seen the movie. It's called Ghost in the Shell. John, what do you know about this thing?
I don't know much about it either, other than I remember seeing the covers when I worked at Blockbuster back in the day and being like, oh, what is this anime looking thing here?
Yeah.
Because, because the initial covers for that are very push on her sexuality.
I guess. I mean,
yeah. Well, at least that's what I remember. That's like my first images of it, because I don't even think I the extent of like any kind of like anime or manga I had seen at that time would have been like maybe some Dragon Ball Z,
Oh, okay.
So not much. But yeah, so besides that, like, no, I had never read this before.
And you've never seen the movie, right?
No, I've never seen it. The movie, Sarah and I, my wife and I, were having a small debate. I don't remember if we saw the live action version, which I know would be a terrible one to go off of. I'm sure.
I forgot that was even a thing.
Yeah, Scarlett Johansson from a couple years ago. I distinctly remember some scenes, but it could be just from trailer, and maybe I'm thinking I saw it and then put it out of my brain.
Gotcha.
But yeah, but as far as it goes, I don't know enough to get me by for this for sure. But I was excited to get into it because I've been enjoying, every time we kind of tiptoe into. I don't say we were really tiptoeing into manga. Every time we jump into another one, I've been enjoying them. So
Yeah.
it feels like there's a lot of stories out there that maybe we have. I mean, like, you definitely have given more time to than I have now, and I look forward to when we read mangas. I like that this one, our Patreon poll.
Yes. So yeah, this one was part of our Patreon polls. Thank you guys for voting. Where it was kind of like cyberpunk or dystopian kind of government conspiracy theory things. That was like what the topic was, and this fit that very well. This was a very, very good cyberpunk science fiction property or whatever. Like, I really, really liked it as far as that goes, because it is hard sci-fi. We'll say that. I love hard sci-fi at certain times of my life. Like when I'm in the mood for hard sci-fi, that's what I want. I want to jump into a book where they tell you a bunch of terms that you have no idea what the fuck they're talking about, and you have to read like 200 pages before any of it starts to make sense. But then once you're into it, you're like into it. That's what I want with hard sci-fi. So this definitely did that, because it just throws you in it pretty much. I mean, there's not much, like, it gives you a little page of like, oh, it's the future, and like, we have cyborgs, and like the world is connected through, these things, the internet and all that stuff, and fiber optic cables and all this stuff. And then also there's these things called ghosts. Now, John, if you could, please explain to me what a ghost is.
So, from my understanding, the ghost would be like if you have like a shell of a I guess your soul, your brain is placed into a machine's body. Yeah, basically.
So you're saying the ghost is your brain and spine that are put in, and then so your consciousness is the ghost. Is that?
Yes, your soul, quote unquote, your consciousness is the ghost in the quote machine of your.
Okay. Because I never quite understood, because they would be like, oh, my ghost is blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like in certain, they use it like a noun or a verb sometimes. And I'm like, in the context of that, I'm not sure what you're saying, but I got like, they're trying to say that what you said, like it's your brain and spinal cord that are put into a machine, and your consciousness is then put into that machine. And that's the ghost, is your consciousness. I think that's what it was saying, but I don't know 100%.
Well, so there's the one. I'll say I think the thing that tips me to that is that because there's crimes called ghost hacking,
Right.
which are humans with cyber brains. So it's like it's a human body, but that has like a cybertronic like add-ons to the brain.
Link or
So
whatever.
like
Yeah, like
yeah,
it's modified.
so that makes me think like hacking into, so like putting electronics into a ghost, like the brain of the human. That's the way I was interpreting, like to get that extra level of like, okay, that's got to be what the ghost is like the ghost is considered like your core essence, which is yeah, your brain and your thoughts and your spinal cord. Like,
Okay. Yeah, I'll buy that. I mean, I'll go with that. There was no real full explanation in this volume 1 of Ghost in the Shell.
well, we got it prepared. I don't know if you caught this is supposed to start happening in just a couple years. This is set in 2029.
Yeah. This is 5 years from now, so I'm down. I
Yeah.
want to see what
So
happens.
get ready.
I mean, we're already there. That's what is that Neuralink, right? This is
That's
maybe
true.
this is what
This is-
happens after Elon Musk releases
This
that.
is Elon, yeah.
So who knows? But yeah, okay, that's a pretty good answer. Oh, dogs.
Oh, can you hear my pooches?
You
Sorry.
can hear them. Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Hopefully they'll be quiet.
Quiet dogs, or else we'll sick Major Kusanagi on you. So, or Kusanagi. Yeah. So, sorry also if we pronounce these names wrong. We are stupid white guys. So, so I'm trying my best. It was actually kind of hard to remember all the names in this because they throw them out. They throw them out sparingly at the beginning, but then it's such a long volume that eventually you kind of get all the names. But then for some reason I was having a hard time remembering hers. So, but I should say this is written and drawn by Shiro Masamune. So, I'm trying to think. I know that name. I think he did like Appleseed and maybe one called Dominion or something like that. It's like kind of, he does a lot of car and like techie car stuff, I believe, in manga before this. So, but I think this is generally considered like his best work or like his most famous work. So yeah. And one thing I think, in the movie, between the movie and this that I was not expecting, the movie is very, because I saw it a long time ago and I watched like 20 minutes of it just to like get the feel of the movie before I read this. The movie is very serious and not jokey or not playful. Little tiny things, but not really, right? This is so different in tone that it threw me for like at least 4 of the chapters. Because I was expecting it to be super serious and super violent and super like naked robots everywhere. And there wasn't much of that. I mean, there was naked robots at the end a little bit, but like at the beginning, this whole opening scene in this first chapter where Major Kusagani is getting ready to like, or she's like listening on this room, and there's like a diplomat in there, and he like tries to pull like diplomatic immunity, and she just fucking kills him, or like kills everybody in the room. No, she kills him. That's right. She like totally blows him up.
Yeah.
Like, and then she like disappears out the window or like outside of the window because she's wearing her camouflage, her thermo optic camouflage. She's wearing like clothes in this, but in the movie she's not. And I was like, why did they, if it wasn't in the manga, then why did they make her naked in the movie?
Because we gotta sell.
I guess, but they don't.
I guess I don't know.
I don't know. You'd think the manga would have it too, like if it was gonna be like that. So right away I was like, oh, it's kind of different. Like the violence is there, but also the art style is a little bit less. It's more warm. I think it's less clinical in the manga than it is in the movie. The movie feels a lot more like hard edges and stuff, whereas the manga's got a little bit more softer, feel to it. So it actually, and it wasn't only that, it was like people were making jokes. Kusanagi is, very different than she is in the movie. Like she's very serious in the movie, and in this she's, she's always joking around with Batou, sorry.
Batou.
Yeah. And so like
just call her Major.
Yeah, I'm gonna call her Major and call him the dude with the goggles for eyes or whatever. So the cameras for eyes. Yeah, I'm gonna call him Bat. We'll call him Bat. but yeah, so like, and then there was a lot less like action in it than I thought there was gonna be, at least at the beginning. At the beginning, and it's kind of interesting once I got into it and the feel of it, and we're gonna kind of go over this slowly. Or we're going to go through this, not like we do a normal book where we go like piece by piece and talk about everything, because this was 366 pages. There was a lot of stories in it. There was like over 12 stories, I think. And then each one did not necessarily connect until the 8th chapter. And then it was like one long story. So once we get to chapter 8, we'll kind of like actually maybe tell the more like linear the story. But for the first couple chapters, we're just going to talk about like how it felt, what we thought about the story at first and stuff, and all the introduction to the characters. So I'll say like at first I was like, man, I don't know if I like this. You know, the cyberpunk stuff was cool, but the tone and feel was not what I was expecting. And then and I didn't understand like some of the, like at first I thought, oh yeah, so they use these, you know, mechs, these spider mech things called like Fuchikomas, but then there's one that's just called Fuchikoma that Batou uses, and that's like his special one. So like at first I didn't get that, and then they had to like explain that in one of these chapters where like the robots try to rise up and they have like a strike.
Yeah, I like that the robots definitely have like everything is definitely futuristic, and like the robots have their own personalities. All of their little Fuchikomas that they get in their they all kind of have their own personalities to them, and they're all like, you know, I like you were saying, I've never watched any of the movie, so I didn't know about the tonal shift other than reading a little bit about it, and seeing like the little bit of, because like they add comic relief a little bit, like if you know one of the like Major or Bat is being a little more serious.
Yeah.
You know, one of them might say something offhand like, well, fine, you know, you don't need me for that or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's kind of fun.
Yeah, there was a lot like more playfulness in this story, in these beginning stories especially, than was in the movie, and I wasn't expecting that, so that threw me off. But I was going with it, and when you don't know, like I was expecting a straightforward story through the whole thing, and these first couple chapters are just like one-off little self-contained stories. So I figured it out about, you know, 5 chapters in, like what they're doing, especially after we got to chapter 8 and it did become a linear story, is they were trying to introduce you to the world like one portion at a time, because it is a crazy world and they don't really hold your hand with the sci-fi stuff. So like they do their best to tell you what's going on, but it is quite a lot to get across in a visual medium. Even with words attached to it, like some of the stuff I'm like, I don't know what we're talking about here. And you had to like understand the visual medium where like you'll see 2 heads merged in one panel, and that just means that they're talking to each other, like I'll say psychically, but they're linked, you know, like in the neural networks or whatever. And they're talking to each other. So like stuff like that, the art had a lot to do, you know, like it really had to had to do a lot of work to help the reader understand like the story and what was going on, because there's a lot going on sci-fi wise. So but it that's why it did these little chunks, I think. Like each story had a part where you got to learn some new characters, you got to understand some things about the world, and then it would be like a little ending, and then you could, the next week or whatever, the next chapter, you would move on to the next story. It was very comic booky, which I wasn't used to in a manga, if that makes sense. You know, where like old school comics, you have just one-off issues all the time, right? And then you'll have a storyline that's maybe 2 to 6 issues long, and that happens all the time back in the, like, you know, and especially like I'm reading Hellblazer and Swamp Thing from the 90s. All the time there'd be like a story, like a full 6-issue arc, then there'd be like 1 or 2 one-off issues that maybe explained this or that to set up what's going to happen next. So I think each of these did set up little things, but for the most part, it was they were there to help the reader understand this world. And so like the first one's just about like this orphanage where they are taking children and turning them, like taking their ghosts and putting them in machines, right, to be like slaves or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, just the concept of what a ghost is, I think, is what's explored in here. And then there's action and stuff so that we can like have fun parts where we want to read it, right? But like for the most part, I was like, for the first 5 chapters or so, I was like, I don't quite get why I was not expecting it to be episodic, and not tied together each, into one solid story. So that kind
Yeah,
of threw me.
and for them being like a, kind of like a military police-esque group, like I was like the action was like kind of, I guess, more sparse, I would say,
Yeah.
than I thought it would be at first. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a very, like, I'm going to say philosophical book, because it does talk about like consciousness and all that kind of stuff, and like what is alive, like what makes a person alive compared to a robot if it's got feelings and shit like that. So those concepts are examined and kind of delved into. But yeah, like once I realized what they were doing, I liked it. I was too used to every manga I've ever read is just one solid story all the way through. There's no like single issue story arcs. So I don't think I've ever read a manga like that before, honestly. I'm trying to think. I mean, except like the ones like Uzumaki or something, right, where the stories are one-offs until they connect, but I knew that going in or something. Like because it was horror, I thought it was going to do that, kind of like Twilight Zone or something. Whereas this, I just thought it was going to be one solid story. So yeah, did you get thrown by that at all, or did you just didn't expect it, so it didn't matter to you?
I don't think I got thrown, but it definitely was like, okay, when are we gonna get like a more, yeah, like I was like, we read one of the stories like, oh, okay, like that was kind of interesting, but like where is this going? Like I did appreciate, like you said, it didn't hold your hand, but it did give you enough like little snippets. Like if they introduced like a real out there term, he did a really good job about like putting either like a cliff note underneath a couple panels or just to the side, like, oh, they're talking about this, which is such and such. Like there's the different levels of prosthesis that people can go through,
Yeah.
which it was like, oh, okay, it's like getting different prosthetics on basically level of like how much of a cyborg you are. Do you just have like some components? Do you have like half a body? Do you have a whole body?
Right.
So that was, yeah, it was nice that he peppered that in there as well, just to keep you going enough if you were starting to get lost.
Right. And one thing I did like is, because the movie, I've seen it, there was little things that they did pepper in, like there's like a storyline where there's a garbage man who is been brainwashed to think that his wife and kid are, or that he has a wife and kid, and he's trying to like make a call to them, but every time he makes a call, it's actually doing something else. Like I can't remember what it's hacking into a system or something. So they have to track it down. And we should say that, like you said, this is like a military or a government agency they work for, and it's called Section 9. And there's multiple sections. And one thing I liked about this is that each section had no idea what the other sections were doing, and they also backstabbed and were like trying to get one over on each section that they didn't like. And that was very realistic to me, like the idea of like government agencies, one, not communicating with each other, and two, doing that on purpose and then backstabbing each other just to fuck with them. And in this, it was even like kill people and stuff. Like, we want to get rid of that agency. Like, we want everybody to die in it. So that was pretty hardcore. Yeah, like it was interesting to read this whole thing as like these chapters. And that's like the main thing that I thought was like interesting about it, because the stories were really good. Like, I thought the actual chapters themselves were all fully self-contained stories, and then they just built on the themes of past issues, so that you would, have like eventually you get to the linear story, which is in chapter 8. So
Yeah.
was there any of these? Oh, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, and they do pepper, because I think they mentioned like there's someone out there that they're called who's gonna be the main protagonist, the puppeteer.
Yes. So yeah.
He got peppered in there once or twice, but that was the thing too. Is like I see the name, but then they don't really go into it anymore, and they go along with whatever the little story of the week is in that. So yeah, I was curious where things were going, but yeah, like you said, it was kind of like they're kind of getting you more accustomed to the group, the main group from Section 9,
Yeah.
and the what is that their chief or whatever, was it
Aramaki.
Aramaki?
Yeah.
Yeah, who is a very interesting looking character.
Oh, you know
He's
what
got,
they did? They changed his look in the movie. I was like, they didn't make him look like a monkey.
yeah, he
That's
looks very apish. In
yeah, he
this.
looks like he's from Planet of the Apes. And they even like mentioned that they're like, "Hey, what's up, ape face?" Like, joking around with him.
Yeah,
I thought that was fun. But yeah, I'd say the only one that didn't matter at all, but it was kind of funny. And I guess I guess it mattered just so you know like how robots work, like how sentient they are or aren't. But that robot revolution issue was kind of like all right. I mean, it was funny because we got to see like the robots interact with each other and have infighting and all that kind of stuff. But it was
oh
also
yeah.
just kind of like, all right, like what's
I,
the story here?
I guess I know that kind of like you said it took out a little bit, but I did like that there was like a little bit of like, yeah, well, we're not going to do what they say anymore, and it's like, well, should we completely overthrow them, or we'll keep some as slaves, or no? Like then that's they're no good as what we're doing to them. We need to just like kill them all, or whatever. And they're like going back and forth over things, and what I think is it's the main Fujikoma that is bats. And he's like, "What's going on?" It's like, "What's going on in here? What are y'all talking about?" And he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, nothing." And he's like, "All right, well, I need you to come with me. We got we got a mission or whatever to do." And he's like, "Yeah, okay, I'm coming with you, buddy."
Yeah, I liked that. That was the like funny stuff that I'm like, I don't understand like how the movie can be so serious and like heavy, and this comic is not at all. Like it was not the tone I thought. And then, but like I enjoyed those funny parts. Like I thought his little robot or his little Fuchikomo was cool, but like I kind of wish they like separated him even more. So like we got them talking to each other while they were while he was like inside of the Fuchi robot or whatever. But like at the same time, they used him like another team member. They would be like, Fuchi, you go up there, and then now my dog's barking. Hold on a second. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. My dog started barking because someone came to our door. But anyway, as I was saying, like when they use the Fuchi robot, like as another team member, I thought that was cool because like he can go do his own stuff, but he doesn't. I kind of thought he was going to be more like a comic relief or something because he is comical in that one robot uprising issue, but then like we don't really hear from him very often after that. I thought he was going to have more of a personality in the team more than he was later on. Did you feel the same way?
Yeah, agreed. I actually was looking for when that issue came.
He's the Jabberjaw of this.
He's. I was like, oh, he's gonna be my favorite character.
Oh, there you go.
And then he's just like, yeah, like they use him, but he doesn't like have like you said, he may have little like okay, I'll go do that or whatever, but he didn't have like little quips or anything like I was hoping for.
Yeah. So, but one thing that robot uprising issue does establish is that robots aren't always happy, or there's maybe different models aren't happy compared to other models. So that establishes what happens in the later story arcs where we have certain types are going crazy or are being programmed to assassinate certain people and stuff. And one specifically, I liked, there was this one where these certain robots, I can't remember what they're called, but they were like, there was like 13 made, and they were specifically programmed to like freak the fuck out and kill whoever they were with, and they were only sold to like rich assholes. So like that whole story arc I thought was interesting, because they were trying to solve this mystery of like why is this model freaking out, and it turned out it was only 13 of those models that had been sold specifically by this one company. And I thought that was interesting. I thought that was good. Did you have any like favorite of these like before chapter 8 issues?
Yeah, I think the one with that with the crazy robots, like I like the like it starts off with some fat guy like golfing, and he's got like these super hot women around him. You're like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh hey, do you mind coming to wipe off the sweat or whatever? And then she starts freaking out, and she's like, I'm gonna fucking kill you.
Yes.
Just out of nowhere, and I was like, oh, what's going on here?
Yeah. Yes.
So yeah, I thought it was cool, and I love I mean, I don't know. We've talked about it before, but I don't think we've ever really established why there's a couple of like a little more detailed like colored pages in the beginning of manga before it
I don't
fades
know.
to
I think it's just like the fancy
s-
like establishing of what it would look like fully colored, and we don't have the money to print the rest of it in color. So
well, I know, but I would feel like they would have the money to print them in color.
no, because they print
Uh,
these in like phone books or whatever. Like they, when I say phone books, I mean like they print them to they put a bunch of them, like a bunch of chapters of different manga in one big like phone book style book, and then you read that like weekly, I think.
oh,
So it's
okay. Oh,
like,
yeah,
so
that would
they
be a
don't,
lot
yeah,
better.
they don't want to print everything in color because it would be too fat and the paper would be too expensive. But they have like newspaper print basically for those. So, or maybe even cheaper than newspaper, like thinner than that. So they print the black and white on that. And I mean, black and white's so much cheaper than color. So there's a reason why most indie comics are black and white. It's
For
because
sure.
color's expensive. So,
And I don't want to knock, yeah, because like obviously like Ninja Turtles, like
right.
Ninja Turtles was fantastic, and all the manga that we've read in general, I have liked them all. So I just I sometimes the color ones are like, oh, that's so cool, especially with like some of the blood and guts sometimes that you get, like the guy at the beginning where
Yeah, where he just gets
you see, like,
exploded.
yeah, I was like that was badass, and like
Honestly,
I
that
feel
was like
like
the only really violent part in this that I could remember.
yeah,
I was surprised because the movie is so violent. There's lots of exploding parts of people, and it's all in color, right? And then they had that scene like on page 9 of the book where the diplomat gets shot up by her as she's outside the window in camouflage, and he like explodes. It was almost like We Three, like where the bullets fly through the people, and then you just like guts everywhere. But then the rest of the book, there wasn't much of that. Or if it was, maybe because it's in black and white in the parts that it was, I didn't register that it was as violent. But I do like the colors that they like the way that they color it. It's kind of like pastel or watercolor or something. I liked the way that the colored parts look in this.
yeah,
Um,
that's what I was getting at. Is like I really enjoyed the way that the color parts are in this one. Like it very much felt, um, and I didn't see as far as like when this came out. This was in the 90s, right? I think
yeah,
this is when it
91
came
this
out.
came out.
Okay, so I was say if it kind of had like a Blade Runner-y feel to me.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah. This is
yeah,
definitely
so
Blade
and
Runner.
especially with the colors, I was like, oh, that's got a really cool. I have such a I'm so picky with my sci-fi, as whereas you definitely
Oh
I
yeah.
think you're more a little more accepting, at least like with your hard sci-fi. Martin Starr over here, and my wife, who is on the opposite end, is like, I like all sci-fi basically.
Yeah.
And so,
Look,
I don't
Snow
know.
Crash is a masterpiece. That's all I'm going to say. All right, it is hard sci-fi masterpiece.
So I get a little more picky, but I always forget. I don't know why I don't go back to it and watch them as often. But man, like the Blade Runners, even the new one, like when I finally sat down and watched it, I was like, gosh, that was a worthy,
You know why?
like,
This is why. Because the first Blade Runner had that horrible theater cut that
mm,
ruins it. I know you like Harrison Ford narration, don't you? You're one of
no,
those, aren't you?
no, I like to. I have. I do have a couple cuts, but the director's cut is the best one, if I
Yeah, that's
remember
the one
correctly.
that's
Yeah,
no narration. It's longer, right? And then it
yeah,
has the. Well, I like it because you could, you get the full experience. It's not holding your hand the whole time. And God, that like that
the
noir
soundtrack.
feel. Yeah, the Vangelis soundtrack is amazing. And also my favorite, one of my actually my favorite part of Ghost in the Shell the movie is the soundtrack. It has an amazing soundtrack. I love it. So, um, it's not what you think. It's not all sci-fi like Vangelis, but it's like I don't know. I can't even describe it. It's just fucking fantastic, and it's in my head all the time. Randomly, will just pop into my head. I'm like, oh yeah, Ghost in the Shell. So,
Is it worth the like, especially after like reading it? Is it worth like comparing them and checking it out?
oh yeah, for sure.
Okay, I can maybe I'll do that this week.
If
But
you read this first, I think it would be less of a shock to see the movie because you just go, much like if you read a comic and then you go to the movie and you're like, oh, they just made it way darker. Like
yeah,
you have a reference for it way better. And also, that's why I was thinking like the movie has a detriment to it, right? Because it throws you in the middle of all this stuff without the little chapter buildups, right? Without the little introduction slowly over a couple chapters of this world and the kinds of crimes that happen in it and the stuff that Section 9 does and like how Kusanagi works, like how she can talk to people with just her thoughts, and how she can interface with systems and all that stuff. Like all those kinds of things are explored in the first couple chapters that are one shots, and then when they get to the linear story, it's like, oh, this is all clicking and making sense now. Like you said, they throw the word puppeteer around and pepper it in the early issues, but then they really, when they make that him the main bad guy, or the main bad guy, for like after chapter 8, it's like, oh, now this is really clicking. Whereas the movie, I still don't know what the fuck happens in the movie. Like the movie is very good, and like very good animation, very good soundtrack, like I said, all that stuff. But it is very confusing. It's definitely like I need to watch this multiple times, and I still might not quite get it. Much like I was asking you, what exactly is a ghost? Because they don't really tell you full bore what it is, but they hint at it enough, and you kind of know what they're talking about. I can't ever quite get my hands on it though, you know? Like I can feel the edges kind of in the darkness, but like I can't ever grab it. So like I could be wrong, like I said, what a ghost is, or you could be wrong what you said it was. Because it might be more than that. They kind of hint that it is more than just like your, like you said, soul or consciousness. There's something else, you know, I don't know. But also it's like, could it be, they weren't talking about souls, right? Because this is so like clinical and cyborg, you know, like it's science, right? Because it's like mechanical things. It's all like circuitry and all that shit. So like, it's hard to put those two things together, right? Yeah. And it tries to span that gap, and it does a pretty good job. I'll say that. But it definitely is reaching for some of those bigger ideas of when it's talking about like ghosts, and then it's talking about cyborgs and things like that. Like, how can a cyborg have a soul? What does, you know, what makes a cyborg or an AI have rights, or, you know, be like a human kind of thing? So that's an interesting thought. Hold on, my computer just totally shut off one of its screens. All right. Anyway, can you hear me still?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I don't know why one of my computers just, or one of my desktop computers just or screens just went black. But whatever. Anyway, so speaking of these early chapters, I think this is probably like the last thing we touch on them. What did you have any that were like not your favorite, like that you were just like, God, will you hurry the fuck up?
I think the one right before the seventh one, like that one where they're like they're in Russia now, and or they're dealing with the Russian. I don't know if she was a cyborg that first comes or whatnot, but then they go to the big like mass city.
Yes. That's funny because that's what I was going to say.
Oh, yeah.
I'm glad
Like
we both agree on this.
it felt like that one was a lot of like pacing and like I get it. Like again, they're police, so like they're investigating some things throughout this, but it was very much just like tonally, we are going to walk through this city and
Yeah.
scope things out, and like that was kind of like the basis of the majority of it.
Also, I thought some of the action in this one was confusing because there was different robots fighting other robots, and in the action of it, sometimes I'd be like, wait, which robot just punched which robot, and who's in what, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I only thought we had one Fuchikoma, but I'm seeing 3 or more now. And wait, which one is good? Which one's bad? Am I wrong about this? Because, you know, so that was, yeah, I thought the Russian little arc was the weakest out of all of it. And I didn't really think, I couldn't remember if it actually had anything to do with anything else. Like, what was the point of it?
Well, I know the main thing is they were going after the like one guy,
The sentient one, right?
Yeah, he was supposedly more sentient. He was I guess he was previously a like combat veteran or something. His name was like Koil Krasnov,
Right.
and like he's a combat cyborg specifically. They mentioned that a couple times, and I don't know, like I guess that like maybe he has information about some of the hacking that's been going on, or
Right. But at the end of it, doesn't he just transfer his mind into the like another body he had, and then he like runs off,
yeah,
and then she lets him go. She says, "Hey, don't worry about it," or they capture him. I don't know. It says like life. She says, Kusanagi says life's a bitch when she catches her. So maybe I say her and him because the guy Coyle turned into a female robot, like transferred his consciousness into a female robot. So, but either way, yeah, like, I guess they capture them at the end because it seems like everything's wrapped up and she had the gun on the bad robot. So, but yeah, it was a little bit like, okay, I don't know exactly why we have this here, but it worked out because the next chapter is the start of like the actual storyline.
yeah, where really everything like picks up and like slides together finally.
Yeah. And that storyline has to do a lot with consciousness and stuff, but it starts off with a bang. We see Kusanagi, Major Kusanagi, at her house. She's getting ready for work. We see that she has a boyfriend or husband or something, and she gets a knock at the door, and whoever was there explodes in the door and like tries to shoot her through the door, and then it has C4, and it's like. I don't know is it a human or a robot because it's bleeding, but you never know with these ones, right? Because
yeah,
I mixed.
I couldn't. I assumed it was mainly was blood. I didn't see robotic parts other than they had C4 on them, so I was assuming it was human, but it was hard to tell.
Yeah. So, her floor of their building gets blown up, but she and her husband or lover or whatever gets out. And so that's like the start of like exactly this storyline where the puppeteer is has gone into his own like body, and he's made a virus that is spreading through everything, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's like a weird virus that is it's gonna take over systems, like all this. It's very hard for me to understand exactly how to explain this because there's a lot of like it's going into this system now, it's in this one, and I'm like, I don't know exactly what that means.
From my like piecing together, it was like, okay, so the government specifically created this AI to be like advanced and learning, and it's going to basically should hopefully be able to like integrate all of the systems better. But it's like, I guess, like you said, now and then it becomes like, I guess, sentient, and then it starts. So I guess they're trying to keep it out of.
They don't want it to
systems.
become sentient. That's what they're afraid of. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like Skynet or some shit, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's very similar to Skynet.
Yeah. But one thing I liked about this specific issue 8, is this is where we really see the infighting between the different sectors. So you have like Sector 3, who her Kusanagi's boyfriend works for. They were doing something on the side, like following this assassin thing, and then Kusanagi was on another mission following this other guy, and then they run into each other, and then they ended up like shooting and fighting each other, not realizing that they were shooting at other section government people. And then when they took off their masks or, got close enough to see each other, they're like, wait, what the fuck? We're the same team. Why are we doing this? And that reminded me of like, that has definitely happened before with like a certain, like a Vice or something with a police, a police in a city. The Vice squad will be doing some kind of sting where there's a drug dealer, and then another cop will see the drug dealer and think that, oh, I'm going to arrest this drug dealer. And it's like, no, we're in the middle of a sting. And then they ruin it or whatever, They start firing on their own people.
I've been on this bus for 2 years. You just ruined all my work.
Yeah, you fucking ruined it. You know how long I was undercover? Now it's blown. Yeah. So, it's very interesting. Like that, I thought this was like the one that really kicked it off where I was like, oh, I really like this one. This one is fun. And it has that whole idea, about like the infighting of the different sectors or sections. But yeah, then I know what your favorite of all of these is, John. It's issue 9 because that's the one with the naked robot lady running around the whole time. Am I correct?
No, that one's yours. I'm pretty sure that every time we have one of these, you're always like, well, which page has the naked ladies on it?
Yeah. Well, I'm not shy about it, but hey, I'm a simple
Look,
man, John.
look for yeah, but for being called Ghost in the Shell and my memories of it being like, yeah,
Yeah, this was the issue, right?
lady, and I was like, oh, okay, this is the ghost they're talking about, boobs. That's it.
Yes.
Ghost equals boobs. Got it.
Yes. Well, the funny thing is, I remembered. I must have seen like the American censor version because I remember that movie, her not having like nipples and stuff in it, and I was like, oh, that's weird. But then like I just watched it, like the first 20 minutes of it before I read this, and I was like, oh, I guess maybe now they are like, oh, you're all adults, you know what nipples look like, so like they didn't edit it out. But then this comic, the women who are, or the female robots or the female cyborgs are, they all have nipples and stuff. So I'm like, okay, so I thought maybe that was just like in the manga itself and that's why they did that, but no, it is something weird with how it transferred over to America or some shit.
I'm gonna protect the youth.
Yeah, but one thing you said, like, oh, it's the like sexy part or whatever, but I didn't find this sexy at all, right? Like, it's all about this robot who gets this is where like the puppet master takes or is it the puppet master in this, or the puppeteer? They call it the puppet master in the movie, so that's why I might be saying that, but it's the puppeteer in this. But it takes over.
It's both. They kind of go back between both of them.
Okay, so in this, the puppeteer has a body that's like a naked female body. So the point of it, I thought, was that like towards the end of this, they just tore her up because she was on the run, and like her arms and legs and torsos are getting ripped off and stuff as she's fighting her way across the city from people. And so I thought the point of this was to put that juxtaposition of like these wires and things in relation to what is classically, a sexy female body or whatever, right? So like I thought those two things juxtaposed with each other was good imagery. I don't know, did you have any thoughts of that, or were you just like, ooh, boobs?
No, I thought it made sense. Like because they're also trying to get to like how you have been able to go like rogue basically,
Right.
and so like pulling her apart nano piece by nano piece basically, also kind of like torture. So
Right, torture. Yeah. But then with this
yeah,
like beautiful female body, that was the hard juxtaposition, right? That's like,
yeah,
I guess all torture would be like that, but because she also doesn't like feel the same way, or at least doesn't show it, like it didn't look like she was being tortured really. So it just looked like, oh, she doesn't have arms and legs, and then the torso is ripped out from underneath and stuff. So I thought that was very interesting. And then the story progresses where eventually it seems like Kusanagi starts like relating, like it starts interfacing and speaking to this AI as it escapes from the lab with the body of the female. It kind of gets out into the Ethernet. I don't know what you call it. the internet, the wider net. I don't know. But she can like start talking with it, and it asks her like, hey, can I merge with your brain? Like, can we talk to each other inside your head a little bit deeper? And she thinks about it, and she's like, okay, I guess we could do that, because it kind of has secrets to the universe, or it kind of says that to her.
yeah. And so it like that's the way I took it, is like, okay, Major knows she has like firewalls and like things in, like there's no way like it could get control of me anyway. And it's saying that like, no, you don't understand, there's more to me than like just me being this AI, and just like you don't know like the full reason why like I was created, and like why things are like happening the way they are within the within the cyborgs and the government and whatnot. So like let's do you have a quick minute for a soul bond? Like you
Right.
want to get together
Soul bond, yeah.
uh,
Yeah, well, and one thing I liked about this issue where they introduced that whole concept of like, oh, like let's get deeper in this consciousness. So so she starts having, like, as they begin to, or it's like showing her what the possibilities are, and it's almost like she sees an angel coming down from heaven or something in relation to merging with this AI. And then as she's like crying almost about it, like, because it's so beautiful, you assume, all of a sudden she wakes up because they like killed the fire, or like they like enabled the like kill virus, you know, program or whatever. And so then you're like, oh, I guess they got rid of it, and they like rebuilt her body and put her in a new one to get rid of that, because that would have been close, right? If she had, whatever was going to happen, it looked like maybe it could have been bad. But then, so you think, oh, she's back to normal, but something has changed with her. And throughout the rest of these chapters, it keeps coming up until eventually she does end up merging with it. And then it's like a new being. I don't even know what you would call it. I'm trying to think of other examples of this kind of thing where like, oh, you know, I can think of a one good one would be like, kind of like in Get Out or something, right? Where there's a consciousness inside of this body, and then there's someone that's taken over the motor skills of this body. But it's not like that. Like they're more fused than that. But they're not. They were two things, and now they're one thing that's different from both of those other things. So it's interesting. It's like fusion in Dragon Ball Z. There you go. That's what it's.
Yeah,
like.
there you go. That's a good.
But yeah, like, and then they leave it hanging there. Like that's how this whole volume ends. Is like, oh, now that she's like this kind of elevated being, now we're done. And then it's like, and to be continued. So I was like, oh shit! Like they just leave it hanging right there. So yeah, what did you think of that whole like merging of consciousnesses and AI and all that stuff?
So that's what I was trying to get at. Was like, so like, was the consciousness? Because it seemed like it was like you know me, and telling her too. So like
right.
that was part of the reason to let me into like, I didn't understand if it was like, was it really like major as the AI? Like,
I don't think so. I think it was saying like, you know me, like we're familiar because we are similar beings, you know. Also, there was like this whole science section. I don't know if you read this and got your mind confused like I did, but there was like literally like a Jurassic Park breakdown of like genomes and copies and memes of copies and all this stuff, and how cells duplicate, and how when they duplicate they have errors and stuff like that. I don't know what you thought of that, but I was like, oh my god, like I don't know exactly what you're saying, but it sounds complicated and interesting. Did you feel the same way?
I glazed over it. I did not really.
Your eyes just went blank.
Basically, I was like, I ain't got time to learn all this.
Yeah, but that conversation that he has, or that it has, explaining to her, like that is what gets her to like say yes, I want to fuse with you or whatever. So, yeah, it's a very interesting thing. And then we're left at the end with like, I guess her body gets destroyed or like she leaves her body because now they're fused in a different being, or like, no, I think what happens is everybody's worried about her, like her team, like Beto is like, oh, I got another body for you, because they think that she's fighting this AI from taking her over. But then when she accepts the AI and fuses with it, they find a separate body for her. They bring her back into that body, and now she is a new being that is this fusion being. And then that's how it leaves it.
Yeah. Which also, I was like, because they're like, that is like, oh, okay, like, you know, are you good? Like, is everything okay? It's like, yeah, I think I'm okay, but like, it's weird being in this male body. It's like, you're a male body. It's like, yeah, you want proof?
Oh yeah, yeah, because it was like a feminine looking body, but then it was like, oh, it's a male body, I guess. So
yeah, I was like, okay, yeah. So like, it doesn't matter what I am. It's that, you know, I've transcended basically.
Yeah. Very progressive.
Yeah, very progressive for the 90s. So
maybe
yeah,
not in Japan, I don't know.
maybe not, yeah. But yeah, so like it was hard to like gauge at the end, like, okay, so like, is she just or are they it? I don't know. I feel bad saying I don't know what, because like they fuse, so they become this new because they become this new being.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know what the being is now. Like it says like they marry.
Terms, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know where her mind is there and where it's.
Well, it seems like, because she answers in this new body, she answers Beto as like herself. she acts like herself when she answers him. So she says like, I don't know, beats me, bud. Like,
That's true.
So it seems like she is all there still, but now she's all the other thing too. And so I don't know, maybe in the next volume, all that comes out. Maybe she's like some elevated being now, but yeah, it was definitely interesting, and that's how it ends. So I know we didn't go through it like chapter by chapter 100% and like pick apart every part of it, but it is very long, and we kind of wanted to just touch on all the different aspects of it. So that being said, John, what would you give it, and what did you think?
So I liked it overall. I don't think it was my favorite that we've read so far. I think that Battle Angel Alita and the I almost said Miyazaki, the Junji Ito ones are
Oh yeah.
still my favorite as far as the manga that we've gotten into. But I can definitely appreciate the story, and yeah, this is the first manga that felt like I picked up a big book and like had to actually read a big book. Because most of the time, like, yeah, they're like 2, 3, maybe 400 pages, but it didn't really feel like that. It breezes through, but there was just so much to the world building here,
So
which
dense.
is fine. I totally can appreciate that, and it doesn't like take away from it for me. It just was like it was a lot to handle. I guess getting into it, I didn't expect that as much, and so yeah, I don't know. I just didn't enjoy it as much of that because I was a little bogged down. But overall, like I still enjoyed it. The art is great. Again, especially I wish I could see a full color version of it because all the colored pages were so cool with their like watery colors.
Yeah.
But overall, I did enjoy it. The this was definitely, like I said, it's kind of slimmer on the action too, actually, than
Yeah, it
most of
does
the other.
get towards the end with that linear story. It does have more action in it, like throughout, because they're chasing down the puppeteer, and then there's like this whole other group of what are they like, robot rights activists or something. Yeah, so like there's a whole other thing that's going on too. But
Yeah. But it just I guess it wasn't as like I don't know like the car chase scenes don't feel as actiony to me
okay,
um uh, in it, but I still enjoyed it like I said. And so I think overall I'm going to give this one I'm going to give it a 6.
oh wow, okay. Um, I'm gonna give this one an 8.5. By the end of it, I really liked it. It took me a minute to get into it because I wasn't expecting the format, the chapter by chapter single story until we get to chapter 8. And then also the tone of it is completely different than the movie. So, but that was due to me going in with preconceptions. So once I got past those and like let it be its thing, I really liked it. I thought a lot of it was awesome. I will say the end little science talk about how the fusion is going to happen and why it needs to happen. That was definitely heavy. Like I don't know if I read that 5 more times, I probably wouldn't understand everything in it. And there's a lot of that's like the tech stuff. I still don't fully understand everything, but I like that they do that. I like that they throw you into this world and you have to figure it out as best you can. And it's kind of like if someone was talking about this stuff. I mean, this was from 91, right? So
Yeah.
like they're making up a lot of these things that haven't been invented yet, but then we have these things now. So some of the stuff makes full sense, right? Like, oh yeah, I know what like a fucking fiber optic cable is and stuff. And
Yeah.
they were explaining that stuff in the margins, like, oh, this is a fiber optic cable. It's like a cable that uses light to do. I was like, oh, okay, like I know what it is. Like I don't need that note because we have those all over the place now. But like,
Yeah.
but then other things we haven't got yet, right? Because this is sci-fi in the future, so it is definitely interesting conceptually. But like you said, this is 5 years. Neuralink is going to be taking over our brains and all that shit. So can't wait for that.
Yeah.
But
And I guess
yeah,
having this like world behind that all of the cyber stuff connects to it also is a little matrixy, so I guess that's actually a little pre that too.
pre-Matrix
So
by 9 years.
9 years exactly. So yeah, so I guess it is a little more like for what it tries to establish and works hard to create. It's pretty impressive actually.
Oh yeah, this is very impressive as like a single, like think about that. Someone is taking that on. You know what I mean? Like, so like one guy is doing the drawing. Well, he's got a studio, I'm sure, but like, you know, he's got the vision in his head of what he wants it to be. And it's a pretty epic vision. Even if it's somewhat confusing, I give him props for putting that out, you know, doing his best to get it all on the page and everything. So I give it an 8.5. I enjoyed it a lot. I do want to continue reading the other volumes. I think there's 2 other volumes of it that are of this series, and then there's even further volumes later on that they did. So I don't know if he did it though. I think maybe other people took over after that. But
I'm gonna amend mine. I'm gonna do a 6.5.
Okay.
It's a little better. That it's like I said, it wasn't my absolute favorite, but I did enjoy it, and I do got to give them a little extra for what they were able to establish and create well ahead of what we have in the zeitgeist of so much of society now.
Yeah, that's like it's like if someone's like, oh, you got to listen to this song from the 50s, and you're like, yeah, I heard it like a billion times in different versions of it. But if you were in the 50s and you heard it, you'd be like, oh my fucking God, what is that sound? You'd be like that scene from Back to the Future. You got to hear this. It's Marvin, your cousin. Yeah.
I guess they weren't ready for that.
Yeah. It's exactly like that. Like it's so commonplace now that I don't think we can see some of the genius in this. But I do know that when the anime came out, and that was more accessible than the manga in America, at least, it was like, what the fuck is this? This was mind blowing. Everybody was talking about it. And I was like fucking 10. And I remember people talking about it being like, it is insane. So, it's pretty groundbreaking in that way. So yeah, you got anything else on it?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, cool. Well, that was, like we said, our Patreon's pick for the this month. So next week we are going to do our exclusive episode, and just because I want to so bad, we're going to read the Department of Truth, because that is my new favorite comic of that I've read in the last year or so. So I read like the full 17 issue hardcover that is out for it like in one sitting, because it was so fucking good. So I was like, oh, we need to do this on the podcast, and I'm going to force it if the patrons don't vote for it. And so they voted for Ghost in the Shell. So I'm like, cool, we'll just do it for the exclusive episode. So
you see how this podcast secretly runs, patrons.
Yes.
And for all of our listeners. So if you want to be a patron, you can go to patreon.com/Plain Strange and Comic Books, all one word. You get an additional podcast every month that sometimes Matt is just going to force upon you for
your own good. For your own good. It's a good comic. It's in fact a great, amazing comic. So
no, and hey, and that's why I've been friends with this guy for so long. I mean, we have been doing this podcast for over 3 years now. We've been friends for over 10 years. Oh, I guess
15 years.
And like sometimes
almost 20 years.
Matt, it sounds wrong, but sometimes Matt just forces his ideas on me, and I'm like, why was I pushing back on that so much? Because that was fantastic.
Because Matt's always right. That's what you remember.
So come on this journey with us. If you want to hear these exclusive podcasts, patreon.com/Plain Strange and Comic Books, all one word. You also get to vote in our poll for our second episode every month. That's for this one that we had. Every month we have a poll. Usually we have a theme. February's will be
Black History Month.
Black History Month.
Yeah.
So we always have some good picks for that. So if you want to get in on that,
but we do know what we're picking for the first one that we do for that month, and we're gonna read Philadelphia Volume 1, which is by Rodney Barnes, and I'm like, I've been wanting to read this for a while. I don't know how we keep missing it, like for Black History Month, but now we're there, so I wanted to read it now. I've heard good things, so that's what we're going to read for the first week or the first podcast of February for Black History Month.
Nice.
Yeah. So unless you got anything else, I think we're good to go here.
I think we'll see him on the next one.
On the next one.
All right. Bye.